Hello, I'm Frank Conkling. This is Panic Consulting's ArcGIS workshop. Today we're going to go over more ways in which the ArcGIS parcel fabric's better than simple polygons for maintaining and taking care of parcels. Previously, we've gone and we said really there's four main advantages to the parcel fabric. One was that the structure was much more easily enforced and it's much easier to go and maintain. The functionality of the parcel fabric, the workflows that are provided once you're in the parcel fabric, and how the parcel fabric actually goes and does a lot of the work for you. And then we were talking about transparency. We're going to build on that a little bit more, talk about some more of these things. Before we do that, a couple of housekeeping things. Down on the lower right corner, you'll see a QR code. It'll take you to panicconsulting.com. It will, there on the front page, it will talk about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. Also, on the very bottom of that front page, on that loading page, you'll see a link where you can actually go and join up to receive our monthly newsletters. In our monthly newsletters, you'll see everything from tips and tricks to the actual what's coming up with the work with the workshops, and you'll see a link in which you can actually attend live. If you are attending live right now, by the way, make sure that you go and put any questions or comments into our chat window. Today, instead of having Chris there, we actually have Mickey. Mickey is Panda's newest employee, and Mickey is working with us on a couple of projects. Please go and put something in the chat window and welcome her and go from there. One more thing, we just want to go and remind everybody that Panic Consulting is a long-term ESRI business partner. We are a silver partner, and we are the first business partner in the nation to get the parcel management specialty designation. We also have the release ready designation and the state and local government designation. So we are parcel people. That's all we do. All right, let's start. So we said previously we talked about the structure, the functionality, workflow, and transparency. We're going to get down a little bit more and talk about a couple of really specific things here. We're going to talk about the COGO parcel attribute, or the parcel type attribute, and why it's there and how it gets used and why it's an advantage over simple polygon. We're also going to talk about a functionality that was introduced at 3.0 for reconstructing boundaries. And this is one that I really love, and it helps a lot of clients move away from using annotation for dimensions and actually being able to start using line labels instead. The next one we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the check for gaps and overlaps tool. This allows us to go and check for gaps and overlaps in our layers without having to go invoke topology. Finally, we're going to look at linear charts. Linear charts allows us to go and create some sort of historic element in here so that we can see where did this thing come from, and um, it's a really nice, simple way, and this was introduced at 3.2, I believe. And then finally, we're going to talk about one that is not necessarily Parcel Fabric, but just ArcGIS Pro, called Generate Schema Report. And this may not introduce everybody or intrigue everybody, but in fact, certain people we're going to find this very intriguing because it's a quick way to go and create a little bit of metadata to go and actually document the actual data model that you're using. So let's get started. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the COGO type attribute field. And in all of the COGO enabled line feature classes inside of the parcel fabric, you wind up getting extra attribute fields, including, in this case, one called COGO Type. COGO Type has a domain on it, and that COGO Type field has a couple values on here. The values that you get for this, let's go and start editing, Frank. All right. So the values that you have for COGO Type is entered from geometry or computed. And what this is for is a way for us to go and quickly see some information about the lines and the COGO attributes that are on the lines. Where did they come from? How much can we rely upon them for making sure that that's sort of the source information for the document or for the deed or for the plat or the subdivision or whatever it is. And what the parcel fabric does is that as we create these, it will go and keep track of the COGO values. Was it in fact entered on here? Entered meaning that the mapper itself actually went and entered the COGO values as they were inputting them and creating them using some of the COGO tools. Or was it from geometry? From geometry means that we had lines that the COGO attributes were derived by going and running the update COGO attributes on here. What we in surveying used to call inversing the lines to see what the actual bearings and distances are on the line, and then finally compute it. And compute it will allow us to go and see, did it have a value? And then what happened to that value? Why did it change from what it was? So we're going to go and just sort of demonstrate those on here. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and turn on our labels for COGO. You'll see them here. We're editing. We don't need a record for this, but I'm going to go and create one anyway, and this is just a sample record. All right, so we're going to go and start creating a line. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create that line using simple constraints. This is when we right-click upon as we're going and creating a line, and we can do direction and distance. And let's go and put a direction in there, and let's go and put a distance in here. All right, when I hit enter, it will go and display. Now, if we look at that, and look at that line, in fact, on the COGO type field, because the parcel fabric was active, because we were keeping track of tax lines inside the parcel fabric, it automatically said you went and created this line, and the value that's stored on there, the values being the bearing and the distance field, were entered by the mapper. Let's go and create one that's not COGO, or that we go and create one here. All right. When we look at that one, it's got no COGO on it, no COGO on it anywhere. It's got a length of 155, and there is no COGO type on there. So let's go and update the COGO on here, and let's watch and see what happens to the labeling. It's going to update and calculate it on here. Now, if we look, we now have brackets on here. The brackets signify that, in fact, these values, these COGO values that you got, they are actually the result of analyzing the line itself. This is, in fact, using update COGO values. And if you look, the COGO type field is set to from geometry, meaning don't necessarily rely upon that. That is not something that somebody entered, but that's something that came and was derived from the geometry that you had mapped out. Now, from that, you can pretty much ascertain that, okay, you can look at it, it's interesting, but it's not something that you want to go and bet your life on and say, no, that's supposed to be 155.48 feet. Right, so those are the first two options. One is the mapper entered it, and it's going to get shown as just a normal distance there, or that it was derived from the geometry. It was using the update COGO values on here, and it automatically gets marked with that. So now that we have this, well, let's go and do something else. Let's go and let's go and split this line. I'm going to use the split. I'm going to do interactive. I'm going to say, let's split this without a selection. So if I go in here and I split that line, notice what happens now with this. When I split that line, the actual label and the COGO values that have been updated on there, because Parcel Fabric is going and watching this, and as you're doing things to the lines, it's keeping track of the COGO values. It says these COGO values, and let's go and select those lines just to make sure. These COGO values on here were computed. So there were values on there, but they've somehow been impacted by that. And where did those values that there are right now, where did they come from? So the question is, can you rely upon them? Yeah, it's better than the ones that are digitized, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can rely 100% on them. It just means that something's happened. What kind of operations can we do that will change these values on here for the COGO type? One, we can create the line. We can run update COGO. We'll go and automatically mark the lines and the COGO values that are on there. If they're new values, it will mark them as being from geometry. We can take an existing line, for example, this line here. If I take that existing line and I do something to it, for example, let's do a divide on that line. Now, this is really interesting. What happens when I do a divide for distances and I input the first distance of 75.50 feet on there? All right, when I go and do that and hit enter, tell it to divide, what happens here? This is where it's really interesting, and it really helps you to understand how powerful the parcel fabric is to automate sort of the collection of information about the quality of the data that's in your parcel fabric, that's in your parcel data. So you've got the value that I input, the one that I entered is 75.5. And if I look at that value, sure enough, the 75.5 is coded as entered. But when I look at the 79.89, that one just says, that was computed by this operation. So what are the operations that result in computed, possibly? It could be a split, as you can see earlier. It could be a divide on here. It depends upon how much of this information you actually input as far as whether or not the software uses the COGO values that you entered or whether it somehow computes the remainder on here. So first of all, this first COGO type attribute is something that is not available inside simple parcel polygons, only available in the parcel fabric. And it's helpful to go and see if you're looking at COGO values, where did these things come from? And should I rely upon them? Is it something that I entered or something that somebody else went and computed somehow without recognizing what the implications are? Built in just by that. Do we have any comments on those? Anything like that? If not, I'm going to go and move on to the next thing. All right, I'm going to go and delete these lines in here. Now, the next thing that I really love about Parcel Fabric is right now I've got my lines, my tax lines all being labeled on here. And one of the things I'll notice is that, for example, because of the way this was derived and because of how we used to have to do it, both all the way back to ARC info and shape files and files, your databases and everything, we would often take the boundary line, for example, of this big parcel, and it would get split. Anytime it was intersected, it would get split on here. Now, those of us that have been in parcel fabric or parcel mapping for a long time, we kind of know this is what we often call the backlot issue, and that it might be correct for this smaller lot here, this front lot might be correct for this front lot and this front lot here, but this back lot, the one that's behind there, that's not a correct value. And it often is not the way it's reflected in the source document. Well, it turns out that there is something inside the parcel fabric that allows you to go and modify that and correct that. So let's go and select these parcels. And we're not selecting the lines, we're selecting actually the parcels that are involved on here. And let's select a bunch of them, all right? And inside the parcel record workflows, if we pull it down, we have this new function called Reconstruct the Boundaries. Let me tell you what this is actually doing. This is actually going through, we selected the parcel, it's actually selecting the record, finding the lines associated with the record, analyzing those lines to see whether or not they form a straight or a contiguous line that doesn't really have bends in it. And if it has contiguous lines, it goes and merges them together, forms one line, and then goes and calculates what the actual value is on there. So now that we know what the COGO type is doing, and we know what this thing is doing, let's see what the result is. After we've gone and selected multiple parcels, some of them have backlots, some of them have front lot issues on here. Let's go ahead and do this. And sure enough, it's done. Now look at what it did specifically right here. It went in here and it took these three values, summed them up, and came up with a value for that back lot. And it noted on there that that back lot is actually a from geometry. So it took it and said, oh, you can't rely upon it, but this is the value. Check it against the source information or the record information. If that's what the value is, you can go ahead and then make that valid, make it entered, and you can then rely upon that. But in the meantime, it actually has now one straight line to replace those previous three lines in here. If we look at this here, it did the same thing here. It took 146 and 116 and added them together and has one straight line here for this on here. So same thing here. It did the same component on here. On this line, within this parcel here, we had three lines, added them together and said, here's the aggregation of those three lines on there. So that one simple function, actually you say it two functions. One, giving us more information about the labels and where did those COGO values come from? How were they derived? And then the simple function of being able to take a parcel and have it analyze the lines associated with that parcel and tell us, is this the total across the back or is it just one part of the line in here? Now gives us a much better way of keeping track of our dimension information. So let's look at that one time then. If I go and take in here and I look at this one parcel line here, this one is actually from geometry. So what happens if I look at it, look back at the source information, I say, oh, that's the value that it is supposed to be. Let's go and change that to entered. It now automatically changes that value there and says, okay, now that's a good reflection of the overall dimension of that parcel, and we can rely upon that. And not just we rely upon it as mappers, but our assessors or appraisers, when they look at it, they know that they can start relying upon it. In addition, when we're producing maps on here for the web, if we go and put those labels in, we know that now that's fully reflective of this entire line. It's not just one bit of it. So again, two of my favorite things inside of the parcel fabric, and they're really simple, but they make our lives so much better, so much easier for what we're doing. I have clients that previously they would go and do this manually, have to keep track of it, and it was a lot of effort. As you can see now, there's not much effort involved in this. It's just once you're in the fabric, now you can start taking advantages of all of the things and all the advantages it actually goes and provides to you. So I don't see any comments up in the chat window yet. Are there any questions or any comments on that? Anything you want to talk about there? Again, this is all built into the parcel fabric. Did nothing special on here. There are a couple little tweaks in here I've made, for example, to the actual line component on here. When this is, by the way, this is the labeling expression that's used for lines inside the parcel fabric. And for example, we are not showing the bearing on here so that we have a setting here, a variable setting of whether or not we want to show the direction. The one that's important here is this show COGO type. I've set it to yes, go ahead and show the COGO type. And then I've got, how do I want to show whether I've got this? And here's my components here. If I wanted to put a dash afterwards, I could change these so that this is a dash afterwards. Let's go and do that. Let's go and change these two. All right. And make this. The reason why I replaced that with double quotes instead of single quotes is because I wanted to go and put a single quote marker at the end of that. And so that all of the ones that are on the right side are going to have single quotes on them now. And if they're on the left side, we're going to go and copy that. So I go over here to my label manager, and I want to say, take the expression that I just modified here, making a single quote here, take that expression and copy the expression, and then paste it onto the parcels labels that have left side and the parcel labels that have shared values in here, and tell it to go ahead and update this. These, by the way, these look like these are null values in here. They don't have anything on them, but that's what we've done. All right. Let's go back to another one of my favorites in here. And I've actually got a bookmark for it. When I look at gaps and overlaps. One of the issues we've always had with GIS is we've got to find a way to go and identify where during the mapping process elements changed. Previously in ArcInfo, we used to do what was called a clean and then a build. A clean would go and take the lines and make sure they intersected, create basically what we in Parcel Fabric now call seeds, and then build those seeds out to full polygons. But to check for gaps and overlaps, we'd often have to go and run something called topology. We'd have to do a validate topology. Validate topology actually involves three processes. The first thing is that when you have lines or features associated with a topology, whether they're on the same feature class or layer, or whether they're multiple feature classes or layers, the first thing it does is called cracking. The cracking here, it's cracking. That's the first thing it does. The first cracking component of it basically goes and takes every feature and intersects it and adds a vertex on that feature. So it goes and creates little vertices on your parcel features. Those parcel features, again, they can be polygons, they can be lines, they can be anything, but it goes and creates those intersections. Those intersections each have a vertex on there. The next process that it does is called clustering. All right, clustering allows it to go and analyze a tolerance in here, and everything that's within that tolerance, what is commonly called the cluster tolerance, everything that's within that clustering tolerance gets pulled together, and it gets pulled to the feature that has the highest ranking. Ranking of 0 is the highest, 1 is next after that, then 2 and 3. So it goes and pulls them all together so that there might be 3 different vertices inside here, and if our cluster tolerance is too large, it will go and bring them to get all together, so it'll be replaced by 1. And when it does that, it also will redraw the things that are connected to them into that place. So what happens is, because of this cracking and clustering, your features kind of move infinitesimally small, but they still move on here each time you run validate topology. by the way, the final process to validation is actually called validate, in which you go and look at the rules that are associated with that topology. And it goes and says, okay, are these rules complied with or not? And it's actually analyzing the coordinate values of the vertices when it goes and runs them. This might be way much more than you really wanted to know, but I did want to go and show you that and basically say that topology and validating topology actually has an impact on your data set. If you do this enough times, if you do it often enough, it actually has what we often call coordinate creep. Kind of things move a little bit back and forth. Again, initially small, but if you do it enough times, you'll begin noticing these changes. Your data changes a little bit. And she's recognizing that. And inside the parcel fabric, what they're doing is they're providing us a function so that we can check for gaps and overlaps between our data without running topology. And it's on the quality control tab inside of our parcels, and it's called gaps. It's highlight. What this does is we can tell it what is the maximum width of a gap or an overlap that you want to identify. And the reason for this is, for example, if we have rows in here, we don't want those roads being identified as being gaps in our data because it's more than we really want. But if we have an alley, for example, well, how big is that alley going to be? In this case, we're saying 6 foot is a good compromise. And then we have the ability to say, okay, we can do it on one layer, or in 3.2, we have this option now, which is an amazing option that says do it on all visible layers. So that if we turn on our other layers in here, it will analyze against not just the one visible layer, but all layers, and analyze and see whether or not we have gaps or overlaps between layers. Vertical analysis on here. And it's as simple as, once you've got this set up on here, just clicking on this, and it goes and analyzes your actual display area. Now, you'll notice on here, I told it show the gaps as being red, show the overlaps as being green. Let's go in here and look at this, and let's look at these gaps in here. So if I zoom in far enough, I'll actually be able to see, I'm probably at the wrong end of it, but there is a gap here. Let's go down to this end. There is a gap in there, all right, between these two polygons in here. So that allows us the ability to go and identify this. Notice one of the things it doesn't do. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't tell us how to fix it. It's now up to us. How are we going to go and fix that? And we can use any of the tools inside the parcel fabric to do that. Again, it's completely up to us. I might go and use, because these are intersections where there are no points in here, I might use either some sort of let me see what that's a line in here. I might go and use, for example, go over here and I might use a align features tool. And the align features tool, I might go and use maybe a 5-foot tolerance and tell it to go and create a line from here, here, go to here, and tell it just go and align that up. Ah, this layer is not editable. What have I got on here? Go and turn this off. I may have some things that I have that are not turned on. This is a data set where, let's go and turn these off. I just pulled the data set out in here. So again, let's go and just say, okay, let's go and draw here. All right, and when I go and check again on here, it's gone. It's fixed that. So what this gaps and overlaps, the highlight gaps and overlaps tool allows us to do is really check very easily, go and check for gaps and overlaps between our data. Again, I can see another one down here that I might want to go in there and fix and identify where it is. It does not fix it for us. I can see here, probably this intersection here has got some issues with it. It does not necessarily go and fix it. It just allows us to go and see it and identify it. It's a really nice tool, something that you can just introduce into your workflow and almost do it every single time. When you create a record, you go and make the changes to it, run, highlight gaps and overlaps, see and make sure that you didn't create any gaps or overlaps in your data, and fix it if you did. Move on there. So you don't have to run topology. You don't have to run all that, invoke that topology engine and all those other issues associated with it. Let's go ahead and clear this out. So that's also the check for gaps and overlaps tool. The next thing we wanted to talk about is lineage charts. This one's interesting in that this is the first iteration of a tool which allows us to go and begin to see where did things come from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on history here, and I'm going to see that, in fact, I've got some parcels here with some components on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a parcel, and I'm going to tell it to go and activate the record for that parcel. So I have an active record. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to go ahead. Let's go back to workflows. Here is parcel lineage on this one parcel. And when I invoke that, what it will do is it will bring up a pane, parcel lineage pane. It says select a record or any of its parcels. Again, key, select either the record or any of its parcels. And it will go and put together a parcel lineage chart using all the parcels and hierarchical. You can go in and look here and it will show you some information about the types of charts that you can do on here. All right, let's go out of here. So let's go in and actually create the chart and we'll look at it. So we do this, it actually goes and creates a chart document for us on here and creates and shows us what was happening. And on here we have, for example, this is the record, C7118 is the record name. And what it did is it created, in fact, these 4 lots. Previous to that, there was this C7118 that was created, and it was created from this, and an access easement in here, and it also created these other components on here. So it allowed us to go and create this lineage chart that we could use this to track where did this thing come from. Now, this is the first iteration of it, but you can see where it's coming from. Pretty soon, I think we'll be able to go and start saying, for example, this is the conveyance division components that were created on here. Here's the parcel components, and here is the access easements that were created out of this and such. So it will be able to go and do more things on here. Right now, not a whole lot we can do, but you can see the beginning of this functionality now. Only parcel fabric, not simple polygon feature classes at all, only the parcel fabric. That's the only thing that you can use this with because that's the only thing it's available in. And it's available on the parcel record workflows, parcel lineage chart. All right, I'm going through these pretty quickly, but there's one more I wanted to show you. And this one is not parcel fabric specific, but it's something that they introduced at 3.2 that I am using an awful lot. I go in here and often I'll be asked, well, what's the final data model? I mean, inside migration into the parcel fabric, it's an iterative process. First, you take your data and you go in and you migrate it into what you think might be the parcel fabric structure. And it's pretty well defined what you have here. For example, this one parcel fabric that we have here. Inside here, we have block parcel types and conveyance division parcel types, encumbrances, quarter sections, townships. We have a parcel fabric. We have adjustment lines in here, connection lines, points, records, topology. We have relationship classes between the record and those various parcel type elements. We have conveyance division, conveyance lines. We have all of these on here. And the question is, well, how do I document what that is? How do I document what that overall structure is so that it's easy for someone else to understand? There's a lot of things built in. You're adding attribution, you're removing attribution, you're putting attribute rules in here, all of these components on here. And there really was no good way to go and document what this thing is until 3.2. Now, when I go here to any feature data set and I go to export, I can see generate schema report. All right. Generate schema report allows me to go and generate, pulls up a pane, says, all right, so what do you want to create? And I can go in here and I can tell it that I want to go and create this on, let me go pull this over here. Dock this. There we go. I can tell it I want to go and put this on my desktop or anywhere else I want to go and put it. Yeah, let's put it in here. And that's the folder that we're going to store it in. What's the name of it? This is going to be test schema, which we're going to export out. Now, what I really like is the fact that you can do it in multiple formats. So I could export this out as an Excel file, or I can export it out as an HTML. Or if it's something that I want to make available, you can export it out as an HTML, PDF, or any of these on here. Let's export it out as these two in here. And just go ahead and export this thing out. All right. This will run. It's extracting the entire schema for that. It's building up. It's putting hyperlinks in on here. It's complete. So let's go to this folder now. All right. So on this folder now, this is an older one, we have the test schema. Let's look at the test schema in PDF, and we can actually see. These are, by the way, are bookmarks in here. So I can see here is my parcel fabric, and it's a feature data set. Here it says here's relationship classes in here. When I look in, and I can see a relationship class. Here's my parcel fabric. When I go here, I can click to it. There's the parcel fabric. Here's the name of it. Here's the version. Here's the topology, whether or not it's enabled when it was created. Here's the parcel types that are defined on here. All of those feature classes in here. As we go, I can look at the tax parcels. Here's the tax parcels. What's the data set it's in? What's the ID if I'm looking for that, and it might be on the enterprise? What type of feature it is? Everything that I need to know to go and document and provide everything I need on here. And the PDF is actually a very nice thing because it automatically gives you the hyperlinks in here, including things like, for example, the stated area units field on here. All right. Now, stated area unit field, these are domains in here that I can go and look at and see what they are on here. This is useful, but this is the one that I really enjoy, is that test schema XML. It will call up Excel, and here it is here. Now here I can actually go, and when I get over to, for example, the parcel fabric, it will bring up this, and on here I can see all sorts of information. I can see spatial indexing, not now. I can see the feature classes that are in here. So it gives me a way that I can go and document this. And I can actually start filling in here, for example, what these elements are. I can start putting metadata in here. Metadata not in the sense of Esri's metadata, but metadata in the sense of I want to do a report for something. I see you
I
have
have a
a,
question.
yeah, I was just going to say, thank you. Heather, one of the things I noticed about the Generate Schema is it doesn't summarize the count of features. Yes, it does not. That's one of the things I'm hoping. And by the way, this is release number 1. That's one of the things I'm hoping that we can start doing is having it do that as an upgrade for the tool. Yeah, great idea. And I hope you put it out there on the ideas page because this is a nice tool, but we just want to go and make sure that we go and keep them pushing it. You know, things like this, the fact that I can see all of the actual feature attribute fields and how they're defined. This is a great tool for this, and I really like it. This, by the way, is not Parcel Fabric only. This is also available in just Pro. It's a really nice tool. And you said, I'm just hoping for a way to go and be able to generate also some counts on here. And if we, as it relates to the Parcel Fabric, we have to think about, well, counts maybe not just in the overall counts of features in that feature class, because remember, inside the Parcel Fabric, a polygon feature class will have historic and current, and they're all separated by the attribution. So we have to make sure that it breaks down according to attribution, for example, where how many current parcels and how many retired parcels do you have in that parcel feature class. So that actually is all of the topics that I wanted to talk about today. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the workshop and keep sending us ideas on things that we can make it better, new topics that you want us to talk about. And thank you all.